Welcome. It's great. Well, I was going to say it's great to see you, but I can't see you. But thanks for coming to this evening anyway. To the Playhouse, which has been like a kind of artistic home for me over this last year and a half or so. And we've got our Christmas tree in the house and all that. And we've got the company. I'll introduce the company later on. But so the crack tonight is that we're launching this book. If I'm looking at the right camera, if I'm not, just bear with me because this is all new. So we're launching this book tonight, which I'll tell you a wee bit about as we go along. And the crack is that we're going to get to the crack very soon. But there's a few wee bits of business that I'd like to kind of get out of the road first of all. Right, I've been a writer for 35 years, earning my keep for 35 years as a writer, and this is my first book. That's a long story. But the short version is, why has that happened? Because I'm as odd as 7 bits. That's the truth. I'm odd. But I was asked to do this by the Junction, whom God preserve, publisher in the town here, who do great stuff. I mean, at the minute, they're doing stuff about ethical remembrance. Seriously now, just for 2 seconds. Taking on the patriarchy. They're doing one about a moral response to COVID. Great stuff. And they asked me would I do a book of bits of writing I've done about the Troubles over the years, and also a wee bit of memoir. And I thought, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. Because as my son said, if you get hit by a bus, Dad, and nobody has been to readings of yours, they'll just have to take your word that you're a writer. So thank you to Maureen and Eamon and Richie at the Junction for getting this thing out in front of people. If you want to get hold of it, by the way, you can get it in the Junction itself, which is off Bishop Street. You can get it in Jenny's in Foyle Street in Derry. You can order it from No Alibis, a great shop in Belfast, or what. You can order it from your local bookshop. And in Newcastle County Down, where I'm from, you can get it in Smith's. They've ordered far too many, but they haven't got them yet. So from the end of the week, you can get it in Smith's. Right, so it's a kind of odd book in that it's a mixture of poems and, as I said, memoir. So I'm going to read wee bits of memoir, I'm going to say a few poems, and then my friends here, anybody I know who's on the stage, I love them. I actually love them. And they're the best of people, and they have agreed to share this with me for just a flat fee of £1,500 each, plus VAT in Roy's case, because he's very, and the most demanding writer that I've ever seen artists produce, you know, like a semi-sparkling water for Roy Arbuckle, egg beaten up in a cup for Pat Lynch, and baby sham for Greta here. But anyway, it's free. Everybody's doing it for nothing. And just in that context, like we're not asking you to do this, it's not a qualification, but if you wanted to make a donation, you know yourselves where to make it, but because it's the time of the year that it is, there's people struggling a wee bit. We're getting to the end of the business now, but there's people struggling a bit just to see their way through Christmas in the mouth of Christmas. And like you can think of the Salvation Army here in the town, Carlisle Street, there's the Foyle Food Bank, there's up in Crowmore, they always have a drive at Christmas. People like that, if you wanted to pay something forward from the night, it would make sense to me anyway if you did it to the like of that. All right, so we're going to get now to in my head it's about 40% about plugging this book, and the rest of it is to do with entertainment. A bit of fun. I said to them when we were doing the book that I wanted to have 2 things in my heart. One, that it was entertaining, and 2, that in the heart of the book itself was Adrian Rich's notion that without tenderness, everybody's in hell. Right, so those ideas I think will be somewhere in this evening as well. All right, just a couple of wee dedications. If you can dedicate a reading or my part of the reading tonight, I want to dedicate it to my wife, Bron, who is at home in Wales praying to God that she doesn't believe in, that I won't let her down or show her up. And to my children, Molly and Jack, who are at home in Edinburgh and Belfast, knowing as well as they know their own names, that I will. So, and to my brothers who are still on the go, Gerard and Declan, and to my sister Moya, who were along the memoir parts of this journey with me. I think that's enough. If I've forgotten something, I'll say it later on. So I'm going to start with 3 little bits from me, and then I'm going to introduce people, and we'll see how we get on. So this is the very first piece in the book. It's called Ferns, and this is one of the wee memoir bits. Kieran, am I looking into the right camera now? I am, aye. Ferns. I want to mention something straight away that I'd rather not mention at all. But to leave it out altogether, I'd need to bite down on my tongue too hard. It would also leave an emptiness at the heart of this book. But if you detect a tremor of equivocation in the first pages of it, you are right. My late father was a fishmonger. He was the most sublime ballroom dancer I have ever seen, on television or in life. And he could make us all contract with fear, our mum included. I know he had a lot on his mind, including the state of his mind. But he seemed to be a man who believed that if problems appear on the road in front of you, you should flatten them into that road. Sometimes your children are problems. Sometimes your wife is the problem. And of course, there was more to my dad than that. I feel that if by the end of this book, or if by the end of this evening, you have no time for him at all, I'll have done something wrong, because I do. Indeed, when I get together with my remaining brothers and my sister, we sometimes ask ourselves, did the violence happen at all? Or is it just a very bad dream that we had together? But I have evidence, photographic evidence. On a family holiday to Butlins, Mosney in 1970, we posed for a family photograph. And just before the shutter went down, I committed some misdemeanor which merited the back of a heavy hand. The others are smiling in the photo. My head is at an angle, a stunned and quizzical expression on my 8-year-old face. How many times did it happen? I couldn't tell you. Was it regular? Well, it was always, always a factor. The fear was constant, and it made you contract inside. Nor was it the fabled odd slap that did me no harm. It was at a level that made Mum leave for a long time and take the weans with her. It was at a level where I remember sitting on a bus to school with a black in an eye in a total blind panic, wondering how I would explain the state of me to the teachers, and lighting on the idea that I might have walked into a door, not knowing, really not having a clue that that's what everyone says. I'm not saying that I staggered somehow out of an utterly blighted childhood. It was my childhood. Obviously, I knew no other. And you can always have crack when you have a handful of brothers and sisters. In the days after the family reunited, after Dad had lost his shop and had a breakdown, we could make each other hysterical as we helped Mum keep the show on the road. Indeed, sometimes the fun could be in response to the threat that there was. There were a number of things Dad did talk about when he was in good form. Among these was that his father, Patrick Gorman, the singing butcher, had been Karl Hardybeck, the peripatetic German music teacher's first pupil in the north of Ireland. He also told us with overwhelming reverence that an uncle of his own had died with the words, the Mass, my holy Mass, on his lips. terrible and all as this is, we found both things hilarious. The first, because the name Hardyback was a hoot and delight to say, and the second, because our great-uncle's last words seemed to be the same. And if we detected the storm clouds gathering inside the house, one of us might pop up and say, "Dad, was Granda really Card Hardyback's first pupil?" Trying not to catch the treacherous, glittering eye of a sibling. Or, riskier still, I might say, if things were really bad, "Dad, what were your uncle's last words again?" If, in the course of that pious inquiry, I had caught an eye and corpsed, I would have been a corpse. Fact. Another thing that could distract or pacify Dad was ferns. When we were wee, he had a fish shop, as I said, and he always dressed the fish trays with ferns. He would be pleased if you brought him some, and they were easy enough to find on the fringes of the town or at the feet of the Mourne Mountains. He always needed a lot of them, and we brought him a lot of them. To this day, I think of them as having special powers of healing. As I got bigger, I became affronted by his blows. I was offended as well as hurt by them, offended that one person, even your dad, could do this to another. And I determined two things at a young age: that I wanted to be a father, a good father, when I grew up, and that I wanted to use words in my life as a force for good, words as real in their impact as violence could be. So there we are. That's the clearing of the throat of that book. I'll tell you a wee poem then, which I wrote about that time, about being 10 years of age and doing the messages when my mum was trying to keep the show on the road. And this poem is called The Giant Basket. And it says, "My father officially wasn't well, if anyone asked. His nerves were bad. And every Friday night I would stand before my mother at the sink. She'd wet her comb and somehow find a shade and beads of water lit on her nylon housecoat. And because I had more sense than Jared, I would get the giant basket and the pound to go to Mrs. Bell's and Mr. Fay and see if they've anything put aside today for Mrs. Gorman, and make you sure to say that it's for Mrs. Gorman. Don't be long." It was a brave step up the Shimna Road on a winter's evening, black and cold. But oh, how lovely it was to feel responsible at the age of 10. Oh, how lovely it was to carry the giant basket for your own ones. Slightly damaged peaches and day-old bread and sausage rolls which flaked more than they should were all heaped into my basket. And best of all were bruised eclairs and buns from Mrs. Bell. And I would come home like a little forklift truck, carrying the giant basket out in front. My brothers and sisters whooped and danced about, and my mother made some tea to warm me up. And even my father, sullen in his chair, would be a little brighter with his share. And with a deal of anarchy, we'd make a meal of Friday's tea, and no mistake. So that's the giant basket. We'll say that for Eamon, who's very fond of that. Right, so we will be arriving at the relief, which is Roy Arbuckle very soon. But I'll say to you this wee bit called Party Pieces, and then introduce Roy, who's going to sing a song from his new album, Thanks Be to God. No, the new album's not called Thanks Be to God. I mean, Thanks Be to God, he's going to sing a song from the album. This is called Party Pieces. It surprised me that people in other places don't know what a party piece is, you know. But anyway, I don't remember Dad hitting Mum in Mournrise, which was the council estate we went to live in. Though for the rest of us, the fear was still palpable, as was the sense of being able to exhale when he wasn't there. God love him too, you know, he must have felt that. It must have gone into him that we would be glad when he wasn't there. Anyway. Every Friday night he went out to play poker or bridge. He was a very, very good bridge player. And one of the disappointments that I brought him was my inability to retain even the rudiments of the game, despite me being the one who went to the Red High. When the cat was away, the mice used to have wee concerts. For a long run of Friday nights, the rest of us would be joined by Maurice, a young woman whose parents' mum used to work for and who herself was very kind to all of us, and her boyfriend Michael Boyd, if any of you in Newcastle know him, Michael Boyd. And Michael, a kind English teacher who played the guitar and was losing his hair. We all had party pieces. Mums varied between recitations like Ireland's Queen or My Dear Little 55, and romantic ballads such as Just a Little Love, a Little Kiss, I can hear her singing it now, and Put Your Sweet Lips a Little Closer to the Phone. My two youngest brothers used to smash it with their full concert a cappella version of Bohemian Rhapsody, and Michael wowed us every week with Ralph McTague's Streets of London. I loved those evenings. We all did, because they were safe. They were safe havens of good-natured fun. Evenings when you could expand rather than contract. And I remember hoping that they would never, ever end. People politely tholed my own contributions, eclectic offerings of Irish language poems and Bowron solos. And then, just around the time when some of the company were finding better things to do on a Friday evening, I started to introduce a poem or two of my own. To my genuine horror, my brother Gerard remembers all the words of Johnny, one of my earliest public efforts about a little blind boy who in many respects could actually see better than the rest of us. And Gerard, if you're, don't ever, ever tell anybody the words of Johnny. I'll give you money. Though never on the bill at these Ceilidh evenings, Dad had a clutch of party pieces of his own. These included a funny version of Cannons to the Right of Them, and the comic songs The Little Shirt Me Mother Made for Me, and his own bespoke version of Galway Bay. These were usually delivered in outside company, Galway Bay being tailored to whatever the gathering was and whoever was in it. But his most memorable party piece was one that has me perplexed to this day. Whenever it could be, I don't know where I'm supposed to be looking, but whenever it could be afforded, the family used to go for a few days in summer to a large guest house in the west of Ireland. The children would be down in the breakfast room, ravenous with hunger as soon as it opened. Mum would come a wee bit later, and Dad later still, once the breakfast was in full swing. And one morning each trip, and we'd never know which, he would arrive into the crowded room like a liner among small boats, a tallish man in the full regalia of a woman. He would greet people at their tables lavishly and by name, and would eventually dock at our own table where we would all be burning with embarrassment. Now, what was that all about? The thing is, while he was tallish, Mum was emphatically not. She was about 4'11". So he must have had to source his own skirts, bras, and God knows what for these occasional performances. The fact is, of course, that it's none of my nosy business. So, at this point, I'd like to ask Roy to sing a song. Roy has been a friend of mine for many, many years, and music, I think, like all writers are trying to be musicians, trying to lift the words up off a page somehow or other. But Roy, Roy's music has inspired me for about 25 years, and you know, his music can do that amazing trick that music can do. It can empty you and fill you at the same time. And he has this album out. It's out tomorrow, Roy. It's physically out tomorrow. Yeah. Aye, with the wonderful title. In the world. Aye, there we go. Random Acts of Senseless Kindness, which I love the title of, and I've asked it. I asked if you would mind doing the title one. Are you going to do
Sure.
that? Thanks, Roy. Thanks a million.
Right now?
Please.
I met an old man in the hills where the wolves still roam, in the depths of the winter's coldest storm. And he said we're each born to our lot, and he taught me all that I'd forgot in a random act of senseless kindness. Saw through all my pride and blindness in a random act of senseless kindness. Gave his precious time to me. Well, I was lost, long, lonely, leaf alone, and I was tossed, bruised, battered, and forlorn. Then she took my hand and time stood still. Didn't understand, maybe never will. In a random act of senseless kindness, saw through all my pride and blindness. In a random act of senseless kindness, gave her precious love to me. I went up north, made my life down by the sea. In the pearly light, a new day dawned for me. For they took me in and they held my heart in a warm embrace, let the healing start. In random acts of senseless kindness, saw through all my pride and blindness. In random acts of senseless kindness, gave me back my precious sanity. Well, I was lost, long, lonely, leaf alone, and I was tossed, bruised, battered, and forlorn, till those random acts of senseless kindness, random acts of senseless kindness, random acts of senseless kindness, random acts, random acts, random acts of senseless kindness.
Thank you. Roy, how do people get a hold of it? How do people get the...
Wow, it is. It's on Bandcamp. Go to Bandcamp and look for me and you'll find it. And you can listen to it, or you can buy one or buy the whole thing, which would be great. And very, very soon, like tomorrow, I think, that'll be on Spotify and Watify and Ifify and Yankify and all them fi's and hi-fi and lo-fi. All those streaming platforms. You know what I mean? That's what they do nowadays. I didn't do it. I don't understand it. But somebody said, press that button there, and here you go. And there will be some hard copies for the older demographic, which will be available from tomorrow. You have to find me on Facebook now. If that's too hard, you're not getting it. All right.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thanks a million, Roy. And we'll hear from Roy again. We'll hear from Roy a wee bit later on. So thank you. And thanks a million, Roy. I'm waiting for the 8-track cartridge to come out to put in the car, you know. Okay, so I'm going to say another. Thanks, Roy. Thanks a million, actually. Thank you. So I'll tell you another wee poem. So, like, as I was saying, poets sing. You know, we are trying to, you know, find words that have a wee bit of music in them, and I sing a lot about the troubles, and try to actually sing about it. You know, so I want to tell you one of those wee things. But I just want to explain something, because somebody rang me today and said, "Your book's called As If I Care." That's a bit high and mighty, you know. I don't give a shit. Is that the title of your book? It isn't really that. It's the reason it's called As If I Cared is because that's how, as a human being, I move forward. This book and what's in it, any wee bits of vision I have, my own demeanour, all of that stuff is better than me. Seriously, it's better. This is better than I am. But what I do with writing is I throw the idea of something a wee bit better than me in front of myself, and then I try to grow into it, you know. Behave, I say to myself, as if you cared, and then try to catch up with that, you know. So that's why it's called that. So it should, you know, it's not the alternative title was not I Don't Give a Shit. So that's why it's called As If I Cared. So anyway, here's a little bit of, normally I recite poems rather than read them, but you've got this book now. And the way I am tonight, I would forget things. So I was asked to do a poem by the wonderful Poetry Jukebox, which is a great thing, which is a jukebox that comes out of the ground. It looks like a blue periscope that comes out of the ground, affording all kinds of perspectives. And I was asked to write this poem to celebrate or to mark the 20th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. And that was it. They said, you can do whatever you want. And I wrote this thing called, If I Was Us, I Wouldn't Start From Here. Because what the artistic director of Maria of the Poetry Jukebox said was, look to the future as well. So my contribution was this: if I was us, I wouldn't start from here. Especially in a broken home like ours, where broken floors and windows feed the cold, each generation has a sacred task: to tell a better story than it was told. For we are reared by stories in such places, clawing through the bitter draughts of these for something we can truly get a hold of that seems to help us off our shattered knees. And the kind of myth my generation supped was we have better heroes than they've got, for ours are much more decent to a fault. And if we've a rotten apple, they've the rot. Our steps now are at best precise and formal, like dressage horses, going nowhere well. Our peace, a thing we part-baked in the 90s and left to prove, and got used to the smell. And yet, even in this half-peace we are living, where death is only half dead, I am sure that we could learn to change our tunes completely. But if I was us, I wouldn't start from here. If I was us, I wouldn't start from here, for here's a swamp we've stood in for too long. We haven't kept our heads above the water and haven't seen a thing where we have gone, and we should fly now, frightened for our children, kick off the bottom, rush towards the air and break the water into different daylight and gasp and say what we can see from there. For especially in a broken home like ours, where broken floors and windows feed the cold, each generation has a sacred task: to tell a better story than it was told. A story made as honey is in bees from things that we have found outside ourselves. So, I'd like now to introduce two people I'm well fond of. Pat Lynch who is a wonderful actor. And he's waiting for the punchline because I've never said that in his hearing before. There's no punchline. A wonderful actor. He did a wonderful job, and very difficult job for me in the last thing I had on this stage, which was a piece called Anything Can Happen. He lifted it up, and he occupied the stage alongside 6 extraordinary people. But they're mentioned in the book, and he's not mentioned in the book. So that's why I'm saying this now. Incidentally, if you have a spare hour and a half sometime, Pat got a letter from John Prine one time. And he had us pinned to the floor for an hour and a half telling the bloody story of that. I could have told it to you, and I'm prolix enough, I could have told it to you in 50 seconds. Anyway, so Pat is going to take part in this. And Greta, who is the acting mother of the Derry girls, or grandmother of the Derry, no, the acting mother of the sorry, Greta, I'm only joking. And a terrific actor in her own right. So they're going to do a piece now in which I was saying to Kieran, in which I was trying to write a row, the arc of a row between a couple who are away for the weekend to get away from everything, and they've got away from nothing. They've taken it all with them, whatever's going on in their relationship. And at the point that we join this, they're actually in, if any of you again are from Newcastle, they're in Bonnie's caravan site in Newcastle. And the character played by Pat, who is Martin, is unpacking, and he's just realised 2 dreadful, dreadful things. One is that he hasn't brought his going away music with him. So how the hell can he go away without his going away tapes? And the other thing is he's not sure that the cooker was turned off because he retained an absolute certain photographic image of somebody, probably his wife Claire, turning the cooker off, so therefore the house is burning to the ground. So these things are occupying him, and his long-suffering wife responds. So this is as I hope, the arc of a row, and it begins with Pat's character, Martin, speaking. Sorry, Pat.
That's quite right. Did you remember to check the cooker before we left?
What'd you say?
Did you remember to turn the cooker off after tea?
Why are you asking me that?
I was just wondering. Well, did you?
I think I did, yeah.
You think you did?
Well, I didn't, stand in front of the thing and take a mental Polaroid and say to myself, I've done that now, I'm sure that's done. Now I can go off and enjoy my weekend.
But you're sure it's off?
I think that it is off.
Oh, God. I was only wondering.
No, you weren't, Martin. You were only worrying. You're like a friggin' patent worry dispenser. One anxiety's taken away and another falls down to fill the spoon. What is the problem now?
I've left my bloody tapes at home. There's only 2 of me going away tapes here. Oh, shit.
Martin, I know this is tough on you. You've forgotten some tapes, some special tapes, but you still got me and the kids. That should count for something.
Oh, you're very bloody funny.
Well, what am I supposed to do? Lie down and weep?
You're supposed to allow me to say, oh, shit, and leave it at that.
And leave it turning in the air.
That's right.
Oh, and all its gem-like splendour.
Bloody right. Look, I don't want to fight on our holiday.
Well, don't then.
But you've got to let me say how I feel. And let me feel it.
But I was making a joke. I was trying to lighten you up.
I know. And I overreacted. I'm sorry.
So, who did you leave behind?
Aretha and Bowie.
Sure, they can look after the house when the kids are away at their
I
grands.
am an Lord, you know, Claire.
No, I do know that, Martin.
It seems such an insignificant thing to you, but it's important to me. We don't get away that often, and when we do, it's only for 2 or 3 days. And to tell you the truth, it's like work to me.
Being on holiday?
Being on holiday, yes.
Ah, Martin, give me a break. Give yourself a break. Tell you what, why don't you give us both a break for 48 bloody hours?
I'm trying to explain to you that it takes me time to relax into the holiday, to exhale. And by the time I've done that, we're thinking about getting packed and going home.
Martin.
And what, Claire? The point is, I made up those special tips to shorten the decompression time, if you like. I made them up for the pair of us, not myself. This is the music that makes the world right for me. It makes it friendly, wholesome, wonderful. So it helps me into the holiday, and it helps me to enjoy the what do you call it, the sea and the beach and all them other things. And I am sorry that I've left half of that behind, probably the best, most evocative half. And so should you be.
Oh, I am. But I wish you could hear yourself. We're 2 minutes into our holiday and discussing what a trial enjoyment is for you. It's a difficult thing, it's a burden, and it is work to have to spend 2 days away at the seaside with your wife. And you carry this weight like an ant with an outsized load. You carry this cross like Jesus Christ himself. And I am supposed to wipe your face with my dress and pour myself like ointment all over your wounds. Well, fuck that, Martin.
What?
I'm not finished yet. You have left your Aretha Franklin tape at home. Well, that is a fact. It's not a creeping disease. It's something you can turn your back on. No, I'm sorry, it's not. It's something any sane person could turn your back on. But you'd never do that. You'd never turn your back on a worry, do you, Martin? They bring out the Mother Teresa in you. You take them in, you feed them up, and you keep them alive as long as you can.
I'm not listening to this.
I know, you should put your music on. That'll sweeten the moment for you. That'll make it all right.
This has gone from a discussion to an all-out personal attack on me, into cruelty.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. It has gone on too far. It has gone on for far too long, and it has to stop. I know you like music. I know it means a lot to you, but I don't think you know what it means. It's a jamming device. It's supposed to keep out all the noises you don't want to hear.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yes, it is, and it drives me crazy. And I'll tell you something else. You can't feel good without it. You can't come here and stare at the water or look at the moon or talk to me without an accompanying soundtrack enhancing your feelings. And that's serious, Martin. That's a problem.
Oh, well, thank you for it. I collect them, you know. It's a kind of a hobby of mine.
I'll see you later.
Well, where are you going?
I'm going out to have a look at the moon. Do you remember what the moon is, Martin? It's that thing from Moondance and Blue Moon and Moon Feckin' River.
Is this, after I drop this, is it still working for you?
Yeah, just give us a, yeah, you're fine. You keep chatting.
Yeah, it's still working now. All right. So listen, thank you. Thanks for doing that. So now that we're getting comfortable with it, and I feel like I'm in the mercy seat here, I can tell you something which is a confession, which is not a good confession. You imagine if this was done on you. I was one time I was having a row. I was having a row. I was absorbing a row with I was part of a row with my partner, and she said something that was brilliant. It was cutting, it was clear, it was distinct, and I wanted to remember it because I thought it was brilliant. And I have a wee small pen that I keep on me at all times, and in the middle of the row, I was trying to just, very, very to just have a very small notation that I wouldn't forget what she'd said, because it was great. And I'm saying that in her favour. It was great and it hit home, but I didn't want to forget it. And she caught me. Are you writing this down? And I said, I'm sorry. Seriously, that wasn't so good. So listen, thanks if you've stayed with us from the start. Thanks for staying with it. And so we're about halfway through. It's catching me at the odd time because this, as I told you, this is the first. I mean, I've made like a lot of TV programs with Davy Hammond and David Barker over the years, and you know, I've written verse plays and so on. But I just never, you know, had it not been for the Junction, I would probably never have put it all into book form. And the things that we're saying tonight are in this book, you know. But I was saying it catches me every now and then. So this is the 7th of December, and I've mentioned my father a wee bit. I want to read you a little thing now about my mother. My mother's anniversary is on the 10th of December, and she died just before my daughter Molly was born. And I had been hoping, Kerry had been hoping that they would meet somehow. You know, Mum was drifting in and out of consciousness at that time, but just that they might walk the ground or be on the ground at the same time. But that didn't happen. But this is a little piece about a kind of, to me, a miraculous thing that did happen at this time of the year, on the 2nd of December, which is Kieran's birthday, and it was my dad's birthday. So I want to read you this little piece of memoir called Piercing the Fog. And then I want to introduce to you a beautiful, beautiful piece that Dr. Walsh used to sing in Newcastle called "Oh Holy Night." And Rachel's going to sing that, accompanied by Maurice and Lucie, but I'll introduce you in a wee minute. So this is all to do with that time, this time of the year. But this is, I think this is about a miracle that happened in this early December, and it's called, the piece is called Piercing the Fog. It references my brother Brenton. So one of the stories in this memoir has to do with drink. And my brother Brenton and myself used to be on the Irish Olympic drinking team. And so that's referenced. But anyway, this is called Piercing the Fog. Like myself, Brenton's boats were all buoyed up when he started to drink. And like myself, he didn't know that it was corroding the bottoms of every one of them. Brenton and I also shared a vagueness, a kind of protective fog, which must have been annoying to the people who needed us clear-headed. I could sometimes retreat or contract, making myself small, like a creature preparing for winter. And a brutal winter came when we were told that our mum was dying. I remember being in the consultant's room of the hospital where she was being treated, when the doctor turned on a light box to show us scans of her vital organs. As you can see for yourselves, he said, it looks like a plum duff. The shocking nature of what we were being told and the blatant manner of its telling shook me out of whatever it was had me etherized at the time. This was my mum, our mum. She was just in her 50s. She was younger than I am now. She came home and our dad was good to her. Everybody was good to her. A complete stranger arrived with a fragment of the true cross, never known to fail. But neither that, nor knock, nor a visit to a kind of monk made any difference. Mum began to drift in and out of sleep, and then in and out of comas. Around the end of November, I thought that she would never waken again. But when I was visiting on December the 2nd, I heard a noise on the stairs. I rushed out to see Mum edging down them in a determined daze, if there's such a thing. She was clutching her handbag. She looked like her clothes had been thrown at her rather than put on, and she said to me, "Is it your daddy's birthday?" I had to think. But she must have thought of it somewhere inside her coma, and she was right. It was his birthday. I tried to urge her back up to bed where any decent person in her condition should have been, but she was having none of it. She told me that she wanted to get Dad a present, a birthday present, and if I wouldn't go into town with her, she would go on her own. She was a woman on a mission. Several missions, in fact. In the course of the next 2 hours, she bought Dad a wee present. She called on the doctor and the chemist to thank them for all they'd done for her, day and night, to give her relief from the pain of her pitiless illness. And she even insisted on taking me for tea and a bun, although the energy was leaving her. I got her home and walked her up the stairs to her bed. She thanked me for taking her into town and even managed a smile. She never walked down the stairs again, and she died a week later. I think that we would all say that whatever compassion is in us, whatever bit of selflessness we have, has its source in this woman. I actually don't think that Mum knew how to do a bad turn on anybody. I wish that I had known her when I had children. I wish I had known her when I had children myself. And I wish they had known her and that she'd known them. I know that it was Mum's example which ultimately taught me to leave the cave, pierce the fog, and enter the world as a net contributor whenever I could at all. It's through Mum's example that I know that we belong together as human beings, and the small streams of our lives have a point of confluence somewhere. Mum. So, as I was saying to you, Dr. Walsh, who was our GP, he was great to all of us, you know, in the times of our illness. Dr. Walsh had an astonishing voice, you know, and he used to sing in the big church in Newcastle, St. Our Lady of the Assumption, and I loved it. Like, I loved listening to Dr. Walsh singing, especially this particular piece which Rachel and Lucie are going to sing now, accompanied by Maurice, who does amazing work here with Allegri, and I'm very grateful to them for coming to do this. So this is O Holy Night.
Long lay the
Wow.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Imagine being able to do that. Okay, so what? That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So listen, this is a wee section. This is a wee section called "Oh Now, How Long," which I'll say nothing more about because maybe there's too much said in this, so I'll not add to it. In my teens, I hadn't much of a clue about sex. And the clues that I did have were misleading or just plain wrong. I knew that I much preferred the company of girls, even though I was briefly in a band with my mates Pagan, the Wild Men of Southdown Rock, and really enjoyed that. What are you laughing at? I longed for the company of girls rather than fellas, but being in a single-sex school had no real idea how to access it. For a period, that didn't seem to matter, as I was going to be a priest. I went on the odd retreat for young fellas thinking in that direction, but it soon became clear to the vocations director and then to me that I hadn't whatever it took. In fact, I hadn't it in spades. And if I'm honest, I kept the idea that I might be a priest alive beyond its time because of my dad. It lowered the threat level for me, who was perhaps one of God's anointed in its chrysalis. He even told me once that he would scrub floors to send me to Maynooth. It was good while it lasted. The thing about preferring the company of women has lasted to this day. But as I said, back then, I hadn't a clue how to speak to women, or more accurately, I hadn't a clue how to cross the distances, the seemingly vast distances between me and them to get into talking range. And I was looking for clues. I used to listen to the bigger boys in our school smoking hot in the hope that a clue or two might drop to the floor from their lips. But they never did. And it was worse than that. One day, one of the bigger boys said to me, "Well, Gorman, I saw you talking to Magella after Mass on Sunday." And indeed, I had been talking to Magella. I was giving her a message for her dad about a fish order from mine. I smiled a manly acknowledgement that yes, I had indeed been talking to an actual girl. And, continued the big lad, did you get anything? The truth is, I did not know what there was to be got, which was unfortunate. As the smoke hut grew silent, hands clasping reeking fags were stilled, and all eyes were on me. "Hi, Gorman, what did you get?" I mean, what was one supposed to get outside 11:30 Mass and Our Lady of the Assumption? But I had to say something. And after an age, I said, or whimpered, "Oh, you know, just the usual." And the place erupted in joyous hacking coughs. A year or two later, outside the Wilmer Bar, head swirling with Galliano notions and uncertainty, I found myself up against a wall with an older woman. Kissing I knew about. I had practiced this on my own, but not what happened next. She put a warm hand down the front of my trousers. But warm and all as it was, I was out of my depth completely. "Oh no," I said. "How long?" All right. So I'm going to tell you another wee short poem now for two reasons. This is right. One reason is so the person or the people who are putting this all in front of you tonight are Chloe, whom God preserve as well, and Kieran Griffiths. And I know that some people think, so we're doing this from the Playhouse, as you know. Some people think that theatre is really about people standing up and sitting down and negotiating furniture and saying other people's words, and that's what it is. And it's a bit self-referential and self-regarding and so on. Kieran, I watched Kieran over a year giving of himself to put things in front of people because, well, for a start in lockdown, like tonight, I mean, this is part of the Playhouse's digital offer. It's important to him that the pilot light is kept lit. And that this, for him, it's not just about negotiating furniture and so on. It's about calling people to the attention, calling human beings to the attention of other human beings. So I want to say this for Kieran. This is a wee poem that I sent to him one time, and I want to say it for that reason, and also in case it's any use. I'm a great believer in Seamus Heaney's notion of a poetry strong enough to help. So this is a wee tiny poem in case it's some use to you, and it's called Acts of Resilience. If you're lost, if you're out of your depth, if you cannot explain yourself to yourself, if you're too tired to sleep, too tender to touch, and if even a little is much too much, if the trails to what's sweet have all grown cold, or you're full of fright like a falling child, then the thing is to act as brave as you're not. Act like your life depended on it. Act like a child who is simply free. Pretend you're as big as the shadows you see. Borrow from dreams that you've had, and you will. Gather the pieces. Know you are whole. All right, so I want to introduce now two things to you in a row. So Greta's going to do something now, and then Roy is going to do another song. And you might think, well, why are you putting these two things together? But so that piece that I spoke to you there, resilience, acts of resilience, comedy, I think like comedy, fun. Greta's piece has nothing to do with comedy, but like on this stage, Pat and myself were involved, and Kieran and Chloe were involved in this piece with, you know, our friends Victor and Hazel and Siobhan and Susan and Tom and the evil Richard Moore, the lovely Richard Moore, which was life-changing for me, like for them, like it was extraordinary. And we were at it about a year in total, and I have never laughed as much in my life as I did with those people who were sharing stories of immense, on the stage they were sharing stories of immense difficulty and hurt, but we had such a laugh in the business of finding out how to do that. So the piece that Greta is going to say is from a play of mine called Loved Ones, about, it's about two, I did it in 1994. It's about two women who have been interviewed by the press earlier in the day, and they both have the same thought, which is, I wish I could do that again. I wish I could do that again, because now that I've gone through that interview, I can see the shape of my story, and I'd be fit to tell it now. So when you see them in the play, they're telling it again to themselves now that they've got the shape of it. And Greta's character, who is called Bron, I told you my wife, Bron, I took her name. Sorry, when I say I took her name, I didn't take her name when we got married. I mean, I stole her name for them. So this character has suffered the death of her son in an accidental explosion where they got the addresses mixed up between Lagan Court and Lagan Crescent. It really wasn't meant for this fella, but he was blown up. And in this piece, Greta's character is telling you about, or is telling herself again, about the day when it actually happened and the aftermath up until the funeral.
Since I was a very little girl, I've carried this nightmare that someday a monster would come. We'd all be doing our usual things when suddenly it would loom over us as an evil we couldn't see round. It would shatter the day like glass. It would splinter my world. And that's exactly what happened the day that Mark died. He was up before me that morning and he'd made the breakfast. Tommy was away with the club, so Mark had the car. He badgered me to sit down and eat something with him. But I'm picky in the mornings, and anyway, I wasn't in good form. I'd put on an overnight wash and it hadn't come on. In the end, he said, "Right, that's the last time I'll make you a cup of tea." And then it happened. In the way that I always feared that it would. The world blew up in my face, and my dear son's face. I have a memory that doesn't make sense just before it happened. I knew it was going to happen, and I started to run to him, but I couldn't be right. I came to lying just about there, like a person who'd been bathing in glass. I was swimming in glass and blood, and I knew that whatever it meant, my lovely boy was dead. Now, I didn't feel numb or detached or afraid, not then, but I went out to him. I went out to him like a prayer, and I cradled him, and I told him that I loved him very much. I told him in a way I'd never told anyone before. I told him not with love, but as love. If you see what I mean. Like, I told him in a way that I honestly think reached him. My heart broke then, and my heart is breaking now. I'll be heartbroken till they put me in beside him. The next few days before the funeral were very hard on me. I was saying to that fella today that I felt really guilty. It was as if I'd left Mark, walked out on him for good. We'd become separated, me and my son, forever. And it was my fault. Somehow it was my fault. It had to be. And I was scared. I was so very scared. But I didn't want to be sedated. I knew it was only me could see Tommy through, and I didn't want to be put out on my own account. I didn't want to be evicted from my own mind. Nolene, she knew I was frightened and that I didn't want to take anything. But the night before the funeral, she asked me to speak to a friend of hers. At least I think he was a friend. She certainly had a lot of time for him. He was the chaplain of one of the universities, I don't know which. I told him how I was feeling. So guilty and so very scared. But he said it was all right to be scared, although it mightn't feel it. He told me that fear could be healing in its own way. I often point out to people, he said, how close the word scared is to sacred. I thanked him, but there again, I didn't mean anything. But I have to say, people were kind. That's the one thing about this place. We gather around grieving people like straw around eggs. But it's tiring too. everybody wants to see you. And there's only so much sympathy you can take. I remember that week before the funeral very clearly. I talked to more people in 5 days than in the whole of my life. When they left every night, I used to feel that I had done something hard really well. I had come through, endured, acquitted myself with honours, but now it was time to go home. I'd a need to go home, except that's where I was. That's where it had all happened. I was sorry that I couldn't come and go from the house like work. And do you know what was the very hardest thing for me to bear? The thought that I was nobody's mother anymore. Nobody's. And it's true, I'm not. I'm nobody's mother now. I remember sitting in the church at his funeral thinking, I'm a mother without children. Stupid, stupid thing. That's what I am. A stupid, stupid thing. Thank you.
That's terrific, Greta. Thanks a million. Isn't it great to have friends who will come and do things like this for you? Right, so Roy, thank God, is going to do another song. And you may say, well, why, we're putting this together. But this is the thing, things stand together, things, light and shade and happiness and sadness. But anyway, and Roy, would you just remind us, please, or remind me about the album and how to get a hold of the album?
Can't remember myself.
You can't, for God's sake. We're professionals.
Get it on Bandcamp or go on Facebook and find me and I'll get it for you.
Right.
All right?
Dead on.
So I thought I would sing a song now which is not on the album. And Spotify are raging. Look, plug your album, would you? So, but I thought a Christmas song would be most appropriate.
Aye.
It's like the holy grail for songwriters. Write a Christmas song, gets played all December. You just sit back and a royalty check come rolling in at your pension. So I did it. So next year, he's better buy it. I'm just an old hippie picking on this guitar. Beside the Christmas tree, the angel and the star. Thinking about brotherly love, cosmic vibes, all that stuff. It's JC's birthday and I think I need another puff. Everybody wants to be a hippie at Christmas. Peace and love, goodwill towards everyone. Everybody wants to be a hippie at Christmas. But it ain't so hip to be a hippie all year long. I picked a flower, said it to your man in the White House. I said nuclear bombs just make me wanna scream. He said, you've got some cheek, called me a hippie weirdo freak. Said, tell it to the commies, 'cause God is on my team. I was amazed. For they say that Jesus wore his hair real long, beard and sandals, and sung a kind of hippie song. Said everybody love each other, make your enemy your brother. Peace and love and friendship can't be wrong. Sing along. Everybody wants to be a hippie for Christmas. Peace and love, goodwill towards everyone. Everybody wants to be a hippie at Christmas, but it ain't so hip to be a hippie all year long. I guess I'll get on back to the old homestead, plant some seeds and pick my old guitar. Find me a hippie mate who thinks I'm really great, and we'll make love and let everybody else make war. What's it for? Everybody wants to be a hippie at Christmas. What a choir. Peace and love, goodwill towards everyone. Everybody wants to be a hippie at Christmas, but it ain't so hip to be a hippie all year long. No, it ain't so hip to be a hippie all year long.
Thanks a million. Right, so we're at the bend for home. There's a few more things to do, but we're... So I'd like to read you a short, this is shorter than the other wee bits of memoir. It's to do with my youngsters and a wee something else as well. But so I'll read you this and then I'll tell you a poem that I wrote for them. So this wee short chapter is called Stargazing. I read poems at the Commonwealth Literature Festival in Edinburgh in 1986. Margaret Atwood was there, Les Murray was there, Tony Harrison, and many other stars. Among them, the lovely Bernard McClaverty, and I mean that, and the lovely Ben Ockery. The three of us went out for a few scoops and we laughed our legs off. Finding myself legless, I stayed while they went home. The next thing I remember is coming to, walking above Edinburgh as the sun came up the following day. It was a beautiful thing to behold, as I was myself, like hell. I was in a part of the city I didn't know, but it seemed to be the hilly outskirts of it. Reaching into my pocket, I found that there was nothing there. Not my wallet, not my room key, not the return ticket back to Ireland. I was, as the bard has it, the thing itself, unaccommodated man, which is not a good thing to be on a Saturday morning with nothing on a Sunday morning with nothing open, no one contactable, no way home. And that was the last time I was drunk. Through a chance meeting with someone from the festival, through her kindness, I got home to Northern Ireland shaken and stirred. When I got back, it was confirmed that I was going to be a father, and a strange thing happened. I threw an idea in front of myself, not with deliberation, but idly, like a yawning angler casting. And the bizarre thought went something like this. Imagine if this wee person who's coming never saw me drunk. Imagine if they never heard me explaining where I had been. Imagine if they never saw me flapping at my pockets in a blind panic. And somehow, that idea developed roots, and she never has. Nor has her brother, who arrived 5.5 years later. Any father would say this, I know, but it is nonetheless true for me, that my two, Molly and Jack, are the greatest gifts that life has given me. I will be in their debt. I will be in debt to them for as long as I live, hopefully in a literal sense, in later years. And let me add this for now, and let it be enough. On the nights on which each of them were born, after everything was done, I went off and lay down for a while with my eyes wide open. Not with fear, not even with the first one, Molly, but with pure wonder. It was as if my eyes were crammed full of stars so that I couldn't shut them. The light from those stars has never dimmed. It never could. So I'm going to tell you a wee poem that I wrote for them, which I only told them. I just couldn't find the right time to tell it to them, but I only told them a couple of days before I sent the manuscript off, because I didn't want them, obviously I didn't want them to come on it in this first. And also just, I thought they mightn't want it to be in, you know. But so anyway, very briefly, just before I came to the Playhouse for that year that I was talking about, I was wading my way through tests and results and health things, and the results seemed to be the harbingers of nothing good. And I thought, I'm going to have a conversation with my two, because this isn't looking great. And I'm going to have that conversation in a way that doesn't wreck them, and also is somehow straight with them too, because you couldn't get much by them. And I want to have the conversation that I'm maybe seriously ill in such a way that, not that they would ever look back on it as a lovely day, this conversation with me, but at least they could remember it without being wrecked by it, you know. So I was thinking about this to myself, and then it turned out that it was what I had wasn't what we feared it might be. It wasn't, and it isn't, you know. However, the wash of those feelings of I will have to talk to Molly and Jack about this stayed with me, and what I did is what I do. I wrote about it, and I wrote this poem, which, like, just to let you know, if it's of any interest, the way I write a poem is I hold something in my left hand, and I hold another thing in my right hand, and I, like a caveman or woman, I strike them against each other and try to make a spark. So the in my left hand was what I've just told you. There was the wash of this thing. I'm going to have to speak to them about this. But I didn't have a thing in the right hand until I saw this young fella doing what we've all done, throwing his youngster up and catching her just before she hit the ground. So then I had the two things. And I wrote this. It's called Unthrowing My Kids in the Air and Letting Go. The fondest weight I've known in my life is the weight of you two plummeting to earth, each of you gathered in, like my whole wealth, having eclipsed the sun with your whole self. And that weight, that lovely weight, that winking flight is as dear to me as anything, and as right as anything in the painful world is wrong. Nothing takes a feather from its wing. Not even the thought, which like a cat appears at odd hours of the night on silent pause, that one day the man who plucked you from the air, that I, in the way of things, will not be there. And with all my heart, I want you to make peace with that thought in your own way. And with this, that when it's your turn, you should fling me high, knowing, as I did, it will be okay. So when it's my time for going, you let me go. Let your grief be just a brief eclipse, for I'll keep going across the universe, telling the stories of you two and me, of us. And I'm saying that for a great friend of mine, Damian Smith, who is a poet who's the same run as me, just a bit younger. And it just so happened that Damian was the first person I ever told that to. I just had written it. And well, I think I told it to Braun, and then I told it to Damian. I hadn't seen him for ages, and he'd had his own health things and all that. And he's been a great support to me. And you know, there's people who do that in our line, and without them, you know, there's people who support you in saying your thing. You know, I'll just tell you this very briefly. When I was at school, we had a teacher who came, peripatetic, not Karen Hardyback, a different teacher came along, and he had a notion to put a choir together, and he got us all up, anybody who was interested, to sing the national anthem of Newcastle, which, as you know, is the Mountains of Mourne. And nobody had told me that I couldn't sing, so I was given it the full lash, and lusty and loud, and I felt this, as it says all this in the book, I felt this poke on my shoulder. He says, the teacher leaned in, he says, "What's your name?" And I said, "Gorman, sir." He says, "Well, Gorman, sir. Well, Gorman, sir. This isn't for you, really. I think you should be miming in the corner. Go you over there and mime in the corner." And I do a lot of work with groups through language, through storytelling, through writing, chancing their arm as writers. And I would say the main work is to oppose the voice that has told them in life that they should be miming in the corner, that they should not be standing up and singing or speaking or exploring or wondering about this great mystery of human life. There should be people doing that, but it's not them. They should be miming in the corner. That's a big bit of what my work is. All right, so the thing that I asked of Pat in Anything Can Happen was hard. So I thought I'd keep with that theme and ask him to do a hard thing tonight, because I've asked him if he would just say the very last words of the play, and that's not fair. But I don't know. I was saying to you that working on that, such a sad thing, you know, it's funny what actually you think about working on something like that, because we were all saying to each other, it has to be beautiful. And if you'd been on the outside, you'd said, hang on a second, what are you doing? You're doing something about the worst year of the Troubles, and you're saying it has to be beautiful. There has to be a bit of crack in it for those working on it. There has to be, you know, how the hell does that, we talked earlier about things standing together, how does that work out? But anyway, these are the last words of the play, spoken by Pat as his character, the caretaker. So it's only a very short thing, but I wanted you to hear these words tonight coming through him.
You know, I heard them all laughing this morning, and it really threw me. What have they to be laughing about, I wondered? Anyone would. But now I'm thinking to myself that maybe you can't cry forever. You can't cry forever like you can't hold your breath forever. Even if you wanted to, even if you tried your best, your own lungs would fight you for dear life, and they would win.
Thank you, Pat. So listen, so what remains now is I'm gonna say one last poem, and then I'm gonna leave the last, the last note of this evening as what it should be, a note of music, a note of song, a warm, wonderful note that we can gather around, again from Maurice and from Rachel. So that will be the last note. But so just before I say to you this last poem, which is going to lead into that, just back to the wee bits of business, which just please bear with me, just to tell you again, if you're interested, everything that you've heard from me and from Pat and from Greta tonight has been from the book. And if you're interested, as I was saying to you, the way to get hold of it is, if you're in town here, if you're in Derry, Londonderry, Jenny has it in Little Acorns. It's Foyle Street, you call that street, isn't it? Down near the Foyle Street. You can get it in the Junction itself of Bishop Street. And just, go to your bookshop. Like when I'm in Belfast, it would be no alibi. It's a wonderful shop. Just ask them for it. They'll get a hold of it. In Newcastle, they've got 140,000 of them in Smith's. That'll be from whenever everything opens up again. Or if you, whenever we're allowed to be together again, I'm going to be going around reading, doing readings, and they'll, it'll be available in a second wave. We've had the second wave of coronavirus. There'll be the second wave of me launching this book with readings. You can get it directly from the Junction, the publisher, if you just email mhetherington@thejunction-ni.org. But there we are. Thank you again. Thank you for turning up. It's strange. It's actually very strange to be I tried to write this book as if it were a reading, because that's what I know, is the intimacy of readings. And it's trying to be a reading in book form with that contact or that warmth. Having said that, it's difficult when you can't see people to try and carry that. But thanks for turning up and staying with the evening. It's been a bit of a day for me, and thank you for being part of it. So I'm going to say one more poem. So we're in the Playhouse. This is the house that Pauline built, as you know, and Pauline heard me saying this about this day last year in St. Mary's, and she told me she liked this. So again, it's about the youngsters. I mentioned about lying with my eyes wide open, and this is called On the Night That You Were Born. So there's a kind of a seasonal thing. And thanks again. So this is On the Night That You Were Born, and then just if you see us out. And thank you, Roy, and thank you, Pat, and thank you, Greta. Thank you. So Jack and Molly and Braun, I hope I know I let you down a bit, but not too much. So this is called On the Night That You Were Born. On the night that you were born, you were handed straight to me like a special fish that had slipped from a special sea. And I held you like a bubble upon my fingertips. I held you like a moment made of milk. And love was a river in me, sprung with a sudden force, for you were both its purpose and its source. For on the night that you were born, a whole world stopped in me, then shook and started over perfectly. Thank you.
Silent night, holy night, holy night, holy night, shepherds grey at the sight, glory streams from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born.
So, hi, I'm Tara McLean. I'm from Ballymoney.
I'm Rachel Wilkinson and I'm from Portrush.
Jack Wilkinson.
My name is Tommy Capper.
Hi, my name is Sophia Brock. I'm from Buncrana.
So I'm Hussein there.
My name is Ronan.
My play is called Arc, and it's about what happens when Earth is no longer fit for habitation.
I called the play Not the War I Wanted. It's about a youth theatre group getting stuck in quarantine in Italy.
It's about this person who goes into a foster family because he killed his parents.
So the story follows Cassidy and Ethan through their friendship, which Cassie instigates after watching Ethan, a creative and troubled boy with a secret, and developing feelings for the mysterious boy on the tube from school.
It follows Tom, who's a grief-stricken father who's not over the death of his wife.
Basically, the story follows two friends, Jenny and Mike, and they decide to study together one day after school in the library. But before they can even take out any books, Jenny notices like a weird smell, and she goes over to check it out, and it's like a dead body.
It's a simple detective story about a library that is burned down, but for some reason, the books weren't burned.
Wow, no one uses those words in real life.
The army have said throughout the day that they hope to use minimum force, but 3 hours after the procession began, this has ended up as the worst ever confrontation between the army and the Catholic people of the Craigan and Bogside.
The White Handkerchief. The people of a city rise to sing in innocent outrage. They move through the pallid light of familiar streets, from the embrace of loving homes, to make a cry under a brooding Sunday sky for civil rights and the recognition of pervasive wrongs. This was to be a day of peaceful defiance. This was to be a day of hope, a day to overcome. Instead, the city ignites in the charged fire of ruthless guns. A butcher's dozen left undone, with another passing yet to come. Lives and loves cut down in the heavy smoke of the Derry air. Truth and justice stolen, murdered there on the streets and the dark lanes of history. A battalion ready for anything as the marauding thief, prepared to spill the blood of innocence upon a white handkerchief.
is not a she. She is a he. Rachel is no longer Rachel. Rachel, I am led to believe, hasn't been Rachel for some time. But who am I? A silly old woman who didn't even notice as her daughter disappears and is replaced by this.
At the heart of the play is the mother's perspective. So it's what the mother is going through when her son is going through his transition. It's kind of her grief around the feelings that she feels like she's losing a daughter. And then it's about her coming to terms with her son and the new relationship that they develop.
I mean, I brought her up to believe that she could be as good as any boy, and now she wants to be one. She's leaving me, Maggie, and I just want her back. I want to be able to open the back door and shout Rachel and see her coming running up home from school all excited to tell me about her day. I want to be able to open the bedroom door and see her lying there sleeping because she's a teenager and after all that's all they do. I want her to graduate again and in that blouse with her hair down over her shoulders. I just want her back, Maggie. I want my daughter back. Well, my character is Gwen, and she's the mother of Rachel, Toby, in the play. She's a feminist. She's very passionate about her beliefs, and she goes in a lot of protests with her lifelong friend, Maggie. She also suffers from bipolar disorder, but at the moment when we meet her in the play, she's well. The thing I like best about Gwen's character is her passion for life and her ability as a mother. She's a great mother. She's very much supportive of her child, and she's been a single parent, reared her child on her own with the help of her friend Maggie, and she has a passion for what she believes in life and different causes.
Sole Purpose Productions is a multi-award winning theatre company. We make theatre on social and public issues. We have been going for 23 years this year. We work with marginalised and working class communities, and we make new groundbreaking theatre on issues that matter and are relevant to communities.
The issues in the play are very important to me. I myself have a transgender grandson, and I was able to have empathy with the character of Gwen. Also the area of mental health and the area of just being a single parent, all of those things, and how she approached it when she heard the news, her shock. A lot of people will be able to identify with that.
I think it's important that we live in a society that can support and be open to and understand and accept these transitions.
What I would like the audience to learn is to be able to identify with people, to have empathy for people who are meant to be the way they're meant to be.
The play is a dark comedy. There's lots of humour in it, and you'll get a lot from it. It's interesting, it's funny, and it's unusual. I think you'll enjoy it.
Let's go.